Hello, I'm Stephanie Powers, and for the next hour, I'd like to take you on a fantastic journey across America to visit some of our nation's finest zoos, aquariums, and wildlife parks. Joining me on this visit are some very special friends.
Thanks, Stephanie. Behind me is the magnificent San Pasqual Valley, home of the San Diego Wild Animal Park. We'll be visiting this park and the San Diego Zoo.
Hi, I'm Jack Hanna of the Columbus Zoo. Stay tuned for the very first Zoo Life special, next.
From the pages of the award-winning Zoo Life magazine, the magazine for animal lovers, comes the first Zoo Life special.
This is the Los Angeles skyline. Like most cities today, the view is being obscured under a heavy layer of smog. More and more, we must realize that we're all being threatened by the effects of increasing air and water pollution. Our rainforests are disappearing at a rate of 100 acres per minute, and along with them, countless species of wildlife we will never know. Enter today's zoo. Over the past 20 years, they have become the modern ark, a refuge for our vanishing species. And they are totally committed to the preservation and the restoration of those species that would otherwise be doomed to extinction. The first stop on our journey is the San Diego Wild Animal Park, and a visit with Joan Embry.
Thanks, Stephanie. If you were to spend a lifetime traveling around the world, you would be hard put to experience what you could in one afternoon here at the San Diego Wild Animal Park. Let's go on safari. Our goal here at the San Diego Wild Animal Park is to breed highly endangered species. But for the 1.5 million people who visit here each year, it's an educational and recreational experience they'll never forget. Developed as a companion facility to the San Diego Zoo, the San Diego Wild Animal Park opened in 1972. With over 1,800 acres, it's become a haven for animals threatened with extinction.
One of the big pluses of a situation like the Wild Animal Park with large acreage is that you can build large compounds and have mixed species together. You'll get the most natural behaviors from your different species that you have, and East Africa is a good example of that. It's about 125 acres. We've got about 13 different species, probably 250 to 300 animals at any given time that live in that compound.
The natural behavior promoted here, of course, includes breeding. And this park's reproductive and survival rate is among the highest in the world.
One of the real good examples of what the Wild Animal Park was trying to do with endangered species was the southern white rhino. Not too many places in the world that had these animals in captivity were doing anything because they couldn't exhibit them in herding type situations. We were able to do it here at the park. We had about a 90-acre plus exhibit. So we had a male and some cows, and we were able to put them together, and we were quite successful. We've had 75 southern white rhinos born here since 1972, so we're pretty happy about that.
Due to the program's success, the southern white rhino has been upgraded from endangered to threatened. Other notable breeding successes include the Arabian oryx and Przewalski's horse. Both are part of the reintroduction program that is ongoing here at the park. The oryx has been reintroduced back to its native homeland, and the Przewalski's horse is expected to be reintroduced back to China by the mid-1990s. I hope you enjoyed our safari. When we come back, we'll show you one of the newest arrivals here.
How can you tell the difference between an African and an Asian elephant? Find out when we return. While there are many differences between these two types of elephants, the easiest way to tell them apart is to check out their ears. An African elephant's ears are much larger, and they actually do resemble the continent of Africa.
Facilities like the Wild Animal Park have become increasingly important as wildlife habitat diminishes. It wasn't until June 13th, 1990, that we had our first successful Asian elephant birth. Breeding elephants in captivity is a major challenge, and few zoos have the facilities or the funds to attempt such an undertaking. But the San Diego Wild Animal Park is committed to this program. For the past several years, there have been some close calls, several disappointments, and a history-making elephant cesarean. When 267-pound baby Omar was born, it was a time of celebration for the keepers and the vets, but some things still didn't go according to plan when Connie rejected her baby.
She was brought in, hand-raised. She didn't bring the smart, she didn't bring this motherly trait that she would have learned in the wild, so consequently she tried to hurt and I would imagine would have killed Omar if we wouldn't have taken him out of there.
Now the round-the-clock task of raising Omar is in the hands of a dedicated staff headed by Alan Rucroft.
We've got him on a routine where he's drinking 44 ounces of milk every 1.5 hours, and we have a 24-hour watch on him. That means a person is here 24 hours a day. Usually when I get here, I like to weigh him. That's the first indication of whether he's, in good health, obviously. Then maybe when the sun gets a little higher in the sky, we like to bathe him and wash him, scrub him. Little baby elephants, they have a very delicate skin, and we, by putting the mud on there, it takes the scales off it, takes the scales off the skin. Just think people pay thousands for this. Yeah. Then he takes his naps, we put the sawdust in there, the wood shavings, and he usually likes to roll in that for a little while. So he's very playful.
But truly one of the most important aspects in Omar's development is social interaction. And while his keepers are doing their best, it's important he develop a social relationship with other elephants. This is Carol. When she was just a baby, I helped to raise her, and now she's learning to be a surrogate mother for Omar.
She looks at Omar sometimes, and I wonder what's going on in her mind. But I guess as long as we keep giving her carrots, she's going to give him the attention. He needs to be able to go between the legs and feel secure. And I guess that's going to help him in his development in later life, He's going to become more confident. It's like raising a child.
So with a dedicated staff and a new mother, there's every reason to believe that Omar's future and the future of the San Diego Wild Animal Park's elephant breeding program will certainly be bright.
Chicago, a big city with a small town charm. It's famous for its pizza, its ribs, and the Chicago Bears. But here at the Lincoln Park Zoo, there are bears of a different kind.
There's something sort of special about the zoo. It's a magical place because it's got a great location and we have a free gate. And I think that this combination allows us to say that we may be the most visited zoo in America. We think about 4 million people a year come through here.
Dr. Lester Fisher succeeded the late Marlin Perkins in 1962. Whether you're young, old, rich, or poor, there's something for everyone at this urban zoo.
I really love it. You can't beat it for being in the city.
Illinois' leading industry is the growing and marketing of farm products. And so one of the main attractions here is a 5-acre replica of a Midwestern farm. It's a way to prove to city dwellers that milk doesn't really come from cartons. Luann Metzger heads up this unusual program.
The farm in the zoo is a unique aspect of Lincoln Park Zoo. Urban children know a lot about gorillas and giraffes. They can identify those animals, but when it comes to cows, goats, sheep, and animals that are domestic and normal for a lot of us, they can't identify them. So it's very important for them to understand where their food and products come from.
In addition to the dairy barn, there are barns for horses, livestock, and poultry. The main barn is the center for most of their interactive educational programs.
Many zoos have petting zoos, but at the farm and the zoo, we take it one step further. We believe that they shouldn't just meet a goat, but they should meet a goat and find out what that goat does for it, what it provides, how many babies it has, a little more information. Everyone can learn a little bit, and most people come here and they're able to learn something on their visit to the farm and the zoo.
This past July, the Lincoln Park Zoo celebrated the 20th anniversary of its first gorilla birth. Since then, it's been a virtual baby boom. One of the biggest challenges facing zoos today is to encourage captive breeding. With 31 successes in 20 years, it's apparent that Lincoln Park makes their gorillas feel right at home.
We gave them the things that were important biologically. We created areas where they could live in family groups, a space to climb and run and jump and play. They do what they want to do, and we feel they're comfortable.
On rare occasions, a female gorilla will reject her baby, which must then be hand-raised by keepers until ready to return to the group.
We came up with the philosophy that if we could introduce them back into the group, that it would be the most meaningful thing we could do. I mean, we wanted to get them back with their mothers.
Head gorilla keeper Pat Sass has been involved with this process many times. Her latest charge is the year-and-a-half-old Bolero.
I'm the gorilla mom. I mean, I bite her belly, I tickle her, I discipline her if she needs it, just like her mother would do. And so the transition is a little bit easier.
With their ongoing successes in this program, it is clear that Lincoln Park will continue to be the gorilla capital of the world for many years to come.
Coming up, jungle fever hits New York.
The Bronx Zoo is one of the oldest zoos in America and is part of the New York Zoological Society. Their strong commitment to conservation goes back to the turn of the century. It all began in 1905 when William T. Hornaday, the first director of the NYZS, spearheaded the Save the Bison campaign. He brought the few remaining bison out of the wild and bred them in captivity. And as the number of bison increased, they were returned to America's Wild West. Since that time, through the efforts of Wildlife Conservation International, the NYZS expanded their role to become a world leader in conservation. Dr. William Conway explains.
Altogether, about 76 national parks around the world owe their existence to the efforts of the Zoological Society, and there are about 122 projects in 43 nations around the world that are being operated by the Zoological Society's scientists, all emanating from the programs here at the zoo.
Over the years, it's this relationship that has propelled the zoo to become an innovator in its field. A prime example of this is the African Plains exhibit. When it debuted in 1941, its open landscape with no bars to separate man and beast revolutionized zoo exhibits. In the 1980s, this tradition of innovation continued with the opening of Jungle World, a 1-acre indoor exhibit celebrating the beauty and fragility of the world's tropical rainforests.
Tropical rainforest covers only about 6% of the Earth, but it contains more than 50% of all the species of plants and animals that there are. We wanted to make something that gave visitors a real feeling of the jungle.
To give visitors that feeling, Jungle World was created by artisans who paid strict attention to detail. Trees that would take 500 years to grow were recreated to the minutest detail. The painted background, blending real and man-made foliage, is the longest hand-painted mural in the world. But the major success here is the mixture of animals that brings the jungle experience just a little closer to the city of New York. Now, almost 50 years after the historic opening of the African Plains, the Bronx Zoo celebrates the opening of another great exhibit.
The Baboon Reserve is very special in that it reflects the wildlife of the high Ethiopian plateau. There's nothing like it elsewhere in Africa.
This 2-acre free-range exhibit is one of the largest primate exhibits in the world. 2 troops of gelada baboons roam alongside Nubian ibex, much as they would in their own homeland.
The gelada baboon has lived next to man and to man's ancestors for more than 3 million years, evolving as a baboon, as we have evolved as human beings.
To highlight this dimension of time, the exhibit contains some unusual elements. Fossil replicas of early man and the giant gelada, as well as these disturbing remains.
This is a 35-year-old bull elephant. It was killed a few months ago in Kenya. See where the face was hacked off right here with a chainsaw to get the tusk. Seeing live elephants in the zoo is the accustomed thing. Showing dead elephants in the zoo is a part of the new kind of educational effort we've got to make people care.
Hopefully, it will only be a short while until people learn from their mistakes. But until that time, the Bronx Zoo and the New York Zoological Society's commitment to conservation will still be going strong.
This is the San Diego Zoo. Its diverse animal population is spread out among a 100-acre tropical garden. And whether you see this vast collection of rare and exotic species on foot, by bus, or in the Skyfari, you'll soon find out why this zoo has become a world-famous attraction. This past spring, the zoo had its biggest baby boom ever in its 75-year history. Over 450 rare mammals, birds, and reptiles were born.
A trip to the San Diego Zoo is not complete without a visit to our koala barn. We have one of the largest and most prolific groups of koalas outside of Australia. Most people think of them as cuddly and cute and think of them as bears. Actually, they're not a bear at all. Let's go take a closer look. You know, Valerie, so many people believe these are actually bears. You want to tell us a little bit more about their structure?
Yeah, actually they're not bears at all. They are in a group of animals called marsupials, which basically is categorized by whether or not the animal has a pouch, or the females have a pouch that their babies grow up in. So the koala is a pouched mammal, or marsupial, and is therefore related to the kangaroo or the possum.
You know, they have such a cuddly look. People think, oh, I would love to hug one, but they do have some sharp claws.
Very sharp claws. They're built for climbing, but they can also do some severe damage if you happen to be holding one, and they can bite as well.
Tell us about the success of the breeding program here in San Diego.
We have had koalas in the San Diego collection since the late 1950s, but very few animals, and our reproductive success was not as good as it has been since 1976, when we really intensified management procedures on the animals. We've had over 40 koala births since 1976.
We have a really special member of our koala group here. Can you tell us a little bit about our albino koala?
It's a very rare condition. Apparently it occurs in humans in only 1 in 20,000 human births. So obviously it was quite a surprise to us. At the time when Gulara was born was another albino koala in captivity in Australia. She has since died, so as far as I know, he represents the only living albino koala in the world at this time.
Here's an amazing story of a fascinating relationship between man and beast.
The drill baboon is another one of the world's rarest animals. It is believed that there are few left in the wild, and within 10 years, these could be gone. With only 18 drills in captivity, animal trainer Gary Priest found he faced the biggest challenge of his career when he met a diabetic baboon named Loon.
We had to give him an insulin injection on a daily basis. And of course, he's a wild animal with 3-inch-long teeth. The only way that we could do that is to use a veterinary squeeze cage, a device designed to immobilize him, to hold him still while the insulin would be injected. Of course, that wasn't a viable long-term solution. That was very stressful to the animal, very traumatic. Our zoo curator, Carmi Penny, called one day and said, "This is the problem. Do you think it's possible to train this animal to accept an injection voluntarily? You have to remember that he had been poked and prodded and tested for a number of months, and he wasn't very kindly disposed towards humans at that point, so it truly was a challenge.
It took a team of veterinarians, trainers, and engineers to meet the challenge and come up with a solution to this problem.
And in order to get him to voluntarily offer up a blood sample, this is what we came up with. His behavior is to actually reach in and grab the rod here, and then this area here where the ellipse is cut out, you can see my arm, is where we'd take the blood. And as long as he's doing that, whatever else we do up here is immaterial. This is the behavior that he's being rewarded for. And we just gradually desensitized him. You can hear the clicking sound that says, yes, you did a good job. A little piece of broccoli, one of his favorites. While he's holding onto the rod, once again, we'd take a syringe and drag the needle over his arm. And now, as you can see, the behavior has changed to where he's gotten to the point where he trusts us enough now to where we can hold his arm. We don't need the tube any longer and do the exact same behavior. And it's just a part of his daily routine.
This training has undoubtedly saved Loon's life, but what's even more important, it's brought hope for a species threatened with extinction.
Coming up, moosing around with Jack.
In 1978, Jack Hanna was flying to Columbus to assume his new duties as director of the zoo. And the pilot on the plane said, "But there is no zoo in Columbus." Well, today, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that there is indeed a zoo in Columbus, and Jack Hanna has put it on the map.
Thanks, Stephanie. You know, people in Columbus are real proud of their zoo. Now let's take a look at the place that I call home.
The Columbus Zoo is one of the fastest growing zoos in the country. Hundreds of animals are housed here in naturalistic settings. One example is a predator-prey exhibit, where zebras, giraffes, and gazelle live under the watchful eye of the lion. We also have a pair of gorilla twins, only the third set born in captivity. But now let's go over and meet a 6-month-old moose named Reva.
Reva, look here. Hey, Reva, easy, baby. I guess Reva's had her bottle today. This could be a world's record. Reva's gonna suck about 40 ounces down in 30 seconds. These are basically orphan moose. We're one of the few zoos in the country to raise moose east of the Mississippi. It's very difficult here with our humidity and with our weather here. Juno's only about 1.5 years old, and so you can see how quickly that a moose grows. This animal will get to be about 1,400 pounds, and they're strictly browsers. These animals eat about 20, 30 pounds of these trees each day. Moose lose their antlers every year, and obviously as the moose gets larger and larger and larger, the antlers have more, you could call them points, like a deer would be. At the Columbus Zoo, we have a real strong emphasis on education. Education really of the young people, because they're the ones that are going to inherit this earth. They're the ones that are going to inherit the problems with these animals. And if we don't teach them about how valuable the elephant is, or the rhino, or the bongo, or whatever it may be, then they're not going to care. All the conservation programs in the world aren't going to work unless young people like this appreciate animals and our Earth's resources.
To that end, there are programs here for all ages, from preschoolers on up through adults. And we try to give everyone a hands-on experience with the animals. There are zoo camp programs for kids, and we offer daily demonstrations with our keepers.
The goal of all these programs is to educate the public about the plight of the animals in the wild. That's what we are trying to do, so people can understand what's happening to the animals in the wild and why they are in the situation that they're in. We certainly want to teach them things, but also we want them to have a good time. And if they are having fun while they're learning about the animals, they're going to appreciate the animals and they're going to remember what they take away from here.
You don't have to live in Columbus to get a zoo education. Most zoos around the country have educational programs such as these. So why don't you check out your local zoo and introduce your children to an educational experience they'll never forget. Who knows, you may learn something too.
The San Diego SeaWorld inhabits 150 acres and contains virtually the full spectrum of marine life, from the simplest invertebrates to the highly evolved cetaceans, over 10,000 fish, 200 marine mammals, and 1,500 birds call SeaWorld their home. Each visitor has an opportunity to experience intimate contact with some remarkable creatures that are sure to bring out the child in everyone. But the best-loved attraction of all is the killer whale show, starring Baby Shamu.
Because of their proximity to the sea, SeaWorld has always had an additional responsibility, a much more serious aspect to their operations.
This is a view of SeaWorld the public never gets to see. It's the base of operations for the Beached Animal Program, which began in 1964 when the park was newly opened. Since then, they have been called upon to rescue as many as 500 marine animals per year.
Sea mammals are very similar to terrestrial mammals in that they are susceptible to the whole spectrum of mammalian diseases and disorders. And seals and sea lions are no different than any of these other types of species. When these animals are too diseased or weakened by illness or injury to swim and cope with the aquatic environment, they will seek refuge on local shores or beaches. And at this time, if animals are reported in need of help, SeaWorld will respond, go out to the beach, pick the animals up, and bring them back here for treatment. About 80% of the animals that we do recover in any given year are either neonates, newborns, or they're yearlings. The major problem with these young animals is malnutrition. We'll get them in here, give them a good nutritious diet, perhaps handle any parasitism problems they have with medication, and then we'll go ahead and train them on a regime of being able to catch and feed themselves on live fish. It's important that these animals be able to fend for themselves when we do release them, so we'll go ahead through a training program like that and then take them out for release.
It was SeaWorld's years of experience that led them to the ultimate test. On March 23, 1989, the supertanker Exxon Valdez ran aground in Prince William Sound, Alaska, dumping 10 million gallons of crude oil into the Sound's wildlife-rich waters.
Shortly after the oil spill in Valdez, my wife, Dr. Judy McBain, was asked to go up and assist in establishing an otter rescue center. After her arrival there, she basically found that she was confronted with pandemonium and chaos and lack of facilities. Facilities had to be built. The realization occurred pretty rapidly that they did not have facilities available locally, nor the prospects soon enough to do proper diagnostic work in kind of an expedient manner so that they could initiate appropriate treatments for the animals under their care.
We got permission to ship 6 animals to SeaWorld in San Diego from Valdez. 5 of them arrived in San Diego and came under the care of my husband, Dr. Jim McBain, who was involved 24-hour-a-day care for those animals, trying to learn, not only how to deal with those animals, but how we should deal with them when they were coming in, because we knew there were going to be lots coming in after that.
While SeaWorld staff provided the vital information needed to treat these animals, those on site worked tirelessly to clean the oil-soaked otters threatened with imminent death. It was a massive undertaking, but many were saved. The otters that were sent to SeaWorld are now part of an ongoing study, monitoring the long-term effects of the oil spill.
All the animals that we have here now that came from the oil spill rehabilitation effort are all animals that we feel now are clinically normal. So we don't expect any real short-term problems with them. One of the questions is what kind of damage has been done to them that's irreparable?
These Valdez otters will continue to be housed at SeaWorld along with other beached animals that need ongoing medical treatment. But the lucky seals and sea lions who have gone through a rehabilitation process will be returned to the ocean, where they belong.
Ride's over. You're free now.
Coming up, Cincinnati's Frozen Zoo.
The Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Gardens has come a long way since its doors opened 115 years ago. Today on exhibit are 780 species of animals and over 1,800 specimens of plant life.
Over 1.2 million visitors come here each year to see rare exhibits such as the Komodo dragon, the white Bengal tiger, and insects from all over the world. The zoo is without a doubt Cincinnati's favorite family attraction. And the man responsible for that is Ed Maruska. As zoo director for the past 28 years, Dr. Maruska has watched the role of zoos change.
It's almost an awesome responsibility, and that is in preservators of species that are slowly vanishing. And that is not slowly, in some cases rapidly vanishing, and that's occurring at an all-time high.
Like most zoos, Cincinnati is dedicated to its breeding of endangered species. But what sets them apart is that some of their methods have actually made history.
Using such high-tech methods as embryo transfer and cryopreservation, the Cincinnati Zoo's Center for the Reproduction of Endangered Wildlife, or CREW, has tallied up 13 history-making events in the battle to save species from extinction. Dr. Betsy Dresser, a scientist with a PhD in reproductive physiology, heads this program.
But one day, I went to a cattle farm, and they had used embryo transfer there with a cow that had produced about 10 calves within the course of a couple weeks, and they had all 10 of these calves in one corral. And it was great. It was like, when I looked at them, I thought, boy, if those could be bongo or eland or endangered species of some kind. Can you imagine what this technology could do?
It took several years of research and experimentation to perfect this procedure for use on exotic animals. Quite simply, the process calls for the removal of an embryo or fertilized egg from the donor female and the transfer of the embryo to the host or surrogate mother, where it's carried to term. In 1984, this feat took on Orwellian proportions, and the world watched as a bongo was born to its surrogate mother, an eland, the product of the world's first interspecies embryo transfer.
This female, this is your famous one, is it?
Yeah. This bongo female is the one that was born to the eland. We named her L.A. DeLay. And she's 7 years old now. And one of the really neat things about her is that she's now given birth to her own calf, which is a female calf. And so we feel like she's normal, grown up with normal behaviors, and it's been real exciting to us to...
And when she assimilated finally into the herd, there was no problem ever?
Yeah, right. We put her right into the herd as soon as she was old enough to be weaned from her mother, and she fit right in. Her behaviors were all the same, and they accepted her, and she grew up with them.
Fabulous.
Now Dr. Dresser is hoping that CREW's stature as the world leader in wildlife reproduction will allow her to realize her dream, to import and export bongos, not in crates, but in test tubes.
The ideal situation would be to bring embryos from the Cincinnati Zoo to the Mount Kenya Game Ranch, exchange embryos, so that what we're doing is interchanging bloodlines, but through the use of this technology.
Until CREW's new facility is ready in the spring, this former broom closet serves as Dr. Dresser's laboratory and frozen home to hundreds of very precious animals.
The frozen zoo is essentially a bank of cells frozen for hopefully hundreds of years, indefinitely. Reproductive cells, or skin cells, or whatever cells that we can acquire from wildlife that contains the DNA, if you will, or the genetic material that allows it to go on and grow and develop and reproduce. If somebody had done this with the dinosaurs, for example, today we could bring them back.
The work pioneered by CREW has only just begun, and until the day when her scientific skills are no longer needed, one thing is certain: Dr. Dresser will continue to dedicate her life to the preservation of wild species.
It's so exciting because there's so much to do, and really so little time, and so it's so important that we do this work now. particularly while we have the animals. Because, you know, wouldn't it be awful if someday man finally figured out that he has to preserve habitat, and he turns around and says, gee, but where are all the animals?
What bird can fly without flapping its wings? Find out when we return. The California condor, with an average wingspan of over 10 feet, doesn't flap its wings. Instead, it relies on wind currents and updrafts to glide and soar above us.
The Los Angeles Zoo is located in the entertainment capital of the world. And because of that, the zoo has very stiff competition for its share of visitors. But after you've spent a day here, you can see why this zoo attracts almost 2 million people each year.
Adventure Island is the LA Zoo's newest exhibit, and it's perfect for children of all ages. The only thing is, though, that you really, really have to see it from here.
Adventure Island is made up of 5 major exhibits, each one representing a different animal environment of the American Southwest. Each area is enhanced by state-of-the-art interactive devices that enable children to learn by doing. Imagine comparing your sense of smell with that of a bear.
Strawberry.
Or playing hopscotch on his footprints and hearing him growl. In the Bat Cave, the walls reveal hidden animals. Or how about a chance to come face-to-face with a prairie dog?
The traditional role of zoos was to display animals for people's amusement. But because of the catastrophic effects mankind has had on his environment, today the zoo's role in conservation is essential. This condor exhibit is an innovative way to explain the plight of the California condor. The innovation is that there are no condors on display.
In the beginning part of the program, where the zoo came under some criticism for accused of trying to get the condors in from the wild to increase their ticket sales at the gate, we felt that the only way to avert that criticism is to have an off-exhibit breeding compound for the birds, and also to make sure that, at least in our first attempts to breed these birds, that there are no confounding factors of disturbance or distractions from being on display.
In 1987, the future of the California condor in the wild was bleak. The mortality rate far exceeded the birth rate. Pesticides were rendering the shells of their young too weak to withstand its mother's nesting. Birds died of lead poisoning from ingesting the bullets of hunted carrion, and the occasional human being couldn't resist the urge to kill. The LA Zoo and the San Diego Zoo joined forces to begin the California Condor Recovery Program. But their decision to retrieve all 27 remaining condors from the wild stirred up a huge controversy.
One camp said, how can you dare bring those condors into captivity? How can you dare incarcerate those animals? What kind of a cruel and unusual punishment are you foisting on them? And the other side said, it doesn't take any heavy mathematics to understand that we are losing condors at 2.5 birds a year. And if we have less than 30 out there, you can sit here and figure up, even on your fingers and toes, how long they're going to last.
The critics were proven wrong in 1988 when the first condor chick hatched in captivity at the San Diego Zoo. In March of 1989, the LA Zoo celebrated their first condor birth.
We've seen 2 things occur. In captivity, the wild birds that were brought in have relaxed enough to breed for us, and the young birds that were brought in or hatched in captivity from eggs brought in from the wild have now reached, most of them have reached maturity, and they're beginning to produce for us as well. We've had the birds go from 27 birds in 1987 in captivity to now numbering 40, depending on what we see for fertility next year and how the season goes. We may be able to double our production, at least for next year. If that occurs, then we'll probably be releasing birds by 1992 very easily.
And that is the ultimate goal of this program, to release these majestic creatures back into the wild so it may soar above us and be a constant reminder of what we would have lost.
Coming up, rebirth of a zoo.
In the last 10 years, Atlanta has proven itself a city worthy of its community pride. Historically, it's a place risen from the ashes, and Zoo Atlanta is a prime example of that tradition.
Visitors to Zoo Atlanta are immediately impressed with its naturalistic habitats, lush tropical foliage, and African-inspired architecture and signage. It's difficult to imagine that this place was any other way.
There were animals in cages, it was dirty, it was small. It was really not a great zoo.
It was on the list of the 10 worst zoos in the country, and the American Association of Zoological Parks and Aquariums stripped the Atlanta Zoo of its accreditation. It was at that point, in 1984, that Parks Commissioner Carolyn Hatcher had a fateful meeting with Mayor Andrew Young.
I remember once when he said to me, well, Carolyn, it's great to worry about the animals and fix up that zoo, but how about all the other problems? And to try to put it in the context of there are people who don't have enough to eat, who don't have jobs. Why is a zoo important? And it was very easy for me to say, well, but first of all, because it's here. And my attitude was, we should either fix it up or close it down.
Armed with her infectious enthusiasm, she drummed up the necessary financial and community support to save the zoo. But the harder task was to find the right person to lead this renaissance. An extensive search led her to a professor from Georgia Tech.
They asked me to stay on for about 3 months to try to stabilize the situation and provide new leadership until the real zoo director showed up. And now it's been 6 years and he hasn't showed up yet, so I don't know when he's going to come rescue me.
In the spring of 1961, a 3-year-old lowland gorilla arrived in Atlanta from the wilds of Central Africa. He became known as Willie B. In those days, zoos were not as enlightened as they are today, and for the next 27 years, Willie B lived behind bars.
Charles Horton has been with Willie B 16 years, longer than any of his other keepers.
Well, when I first started taking care of Willie in the old building that we had, we just had a bare floor with tile, and Willie had a very small world, you know, and I think we felt obligated to be his social life over the years, since he never had anybody.
And when the first phase of Zoo Atlanta's renovations were completed, Willie B got his new home at the Ford African Rainforest.
Getting Willie outside for the first time, it had to be the best day so far of my life here at the zoo. You know, I mean, we had never, I would have never dreamed it was possible, even maybe 2 years before that. The fact that we can give him an identity of his own and not just like our personal pet or our mascot is, you know, it's very dignifying to finally give an animal what he deserves.
As Willie adapted to his new surroundings, he not only lost 40 pounds, he began exhibiting more instinctive behavior. But would that newfound behavior prevail when introduced to a potential mate?
We did maybe 2 months of the indoor introduction before we put them outside together. And I felt really another big blessing as I was walking by and just happened to catch them by accident and didn't really believe what I was seeing. You know, I said, how did they figure this out? And it was just another incredible big day for us. And now all we have to hope for is fertility.
The citizens of Atlanta have many reasons to celebrate. In 1996, the world will come to Atlanta for the Olympic Games, and Zoo Atlanta and Willie B will no doubt continue to flourish.
Let us hope that the remarkable efforts that are being made are not too little or too late. For if they are, the loss of these remarkable species with whom we've shared our journey through evolution could very well be the bell that tolls for us. But education could be our greatest savior. It was best said by an African conservationist when he said, in the end, we will only conserve the things we love. We will only love the things we understand. And we will only understand the things we are taught